Okay, well, hey, this is the second part of our lecture on Module 8, and we're going to talk a little bit about the jobs, and we're going to shift to the responsibilities and the job stressors and things like that. So basically, one of the things we didn't talk about the jobs is probably the primo jobs that you can get in corrections and in probation is for the federal system. Now, one thing I would say is the difference between some of the local, state, and federal is on the local level, they may not require any kind of education beyond maybe a GED. Now, usually you have to be over 21 to get any kind of a correctional job. In the state level, some states require at least an associate's degree to be a corrections officer. Other states say that you need at least a bachelor's degree, and then in most states you have to have at least a bachelor's degree to be a probation officer. Now, I know in some states parole officers that your experience can actually count against some of your education, so you'd have to have like an associate degree and 5 years of experience as a correctional officer, for example. Now, in the federal system, it is the best benefits, best pay, and at the corrections level for the Bureau of Prisons, you have to have at least a bachelor's degree. And those are highly sought after jobs. Some people, they say, they get these jobs, not only do they have a bachelor's degree, they have 2 to 5 years of experience at the state level working at a prison or something like that. So they want not only at least a bachelor's degree, but they want experience. So, you know, that might be an end goal for you if you start out county or local or state level and then work your way up to the federal. That could be a good goal as if you are interested in corrections. Now, the same goes for probation. Now, the thing is, at the federal level, again, even though you have to have at least a bachelor's degree to be basically interviewed, in the federal system, a lot of people I'm talking to say that you just about have to have a master's degree to get hired and, again, some kind of experience. So those are things to consider. Now, one thing I would say also, most federal positions closed at age 36. So you can there's a window to be hired between 21 and 36. Now, I know some states, they will hire, like, for example, a retired police officer with a bachelor's degree. So let's say the guy's 45, but he's got like 20 years as a police officer. Well, they will accept those 20 years and now not count those against the guy. So in a way, they're saying, well, for our purposes, we consider him to be 25 because they take the 20 years off of his age, which is 45, and so they allow him to be hired as though he were a 25-year-old man or woman. So these are issues that you're going to need to contend with. Some of you I know are older adult learners, and so you've got to check and see what your local requirements are, and then I can tell you that it's very competitive at the federal level, and here again, there are these age requirements, and they're pretty strict. Now, another thing that's in your outline that is also good if you're thinking about this is if you have military experience, if you've been in the military for any length of time, a lot of these places will give you credit for that as work experience. So that could be really helpful if you're thinking that you want to go in law enforcement or corrections or anything like that. Now, one thing that's different between a standard law enforcement officer and a corrections officer is arrest powers. A lot of your law enforcement officers, they have arrest powers, which means they can arrest anybody in their state. Now, corrections officers generally do not have arrest powers other than this regular old citizens arrest powers that we all have. You know, kind of reminds me of Andy Griffith every time that I say that, because that one time Gomer went after Don Knotts' character, and he's yelling "citizens arrest," but basically that's the only kind of arrest powers a corrections officer has. Now, at the county level, again, sheriffs have a different kind of a setup. You can have what they call road deputy and jail deputy. And it's up to the sheriff. Should jail deputies have arrest powers? Well, sometimes they have to pull somebody off the road to serve as a jail deputy. So it really is up to the local sheriff how he wants to handle that. So any kind of college training, military experience, or any kind of internships, things like that can always be helpful if you're interested in getting any of these kind of positions. Most of you know that I was a probation officer, and I'll tell you, it was one of the best jobs I ever had. I sometimes wonder why I didn't stick with that. I got a lot of satisfaction from it. I helped kids. I felt like I really did. I felt like most of my clients turned out really well. It's just a phase. You hear that people going through a phase, you know. Unfortunately, it's like a crime phase, you know. But a lot of these kids that grow out of that, you know, and they say most people age out of crime. And so they get to be over 30, they're no longer interested because they got family, they got responsibilities, and they just don't want to keep messing up for the rest of their life. So basically, you know, my probation job, I would highly recommend it. I think it was a great experience. I'd do it again. I mean, I just really felt really positive about what I was doing. Pay was terrible, but the pay's better. And here again, the best pay, of course, is at the federal level. And pay is going to vary from like California and New York. It's going to be pretty good. You get in some of these smaller states, West Virginia, some places like that, any kind of government pay probably not going to be that good. So it's one of these things you've got to look at too, is, you know, what can you afford to accept in terms of what you spent. Now I want to tell you about something else if you're a student, and that is that there are opportunities out there they're talking about. Now I don't know if they're still doing it, but it worked for me. All my preliminary graduate work that I did was paid for by the federal government because I was a probation officer. So once you get that, if you have student loans and so forth, I'm hearing that there's going to be a program where they will forgive your student loans because you're working for the government and they know that you're not making as much money as some people in private industry. So I would definitely look into that and see if there's those possibilities. Another thing about probation, some states require an exam, kind of like a bar exam, only not quite that bad, but on that level where you have to take a multi-hour type of test on your knowledge of criminal justice. You know, some places interviewing is pretty strict. If you have any kind of dings on your record as far as minor offenses or anything, those could be problematic. So basically it's a competitive business. One thing I will say though is there are a lot of jobs, and I foresee a lot of potential out there for people that want to work in probation and in corrections, because there's going to be a lot of people aging out as far as employees my age that are going to be saying, hey, I'm hanging it up, got my time in, I'm going to move on and fish, you know. With the shifts in the system, we put more people on community corrections, then there's going to need to be more community corrections officers, which is kind of a branch of probation, generally speaking. So, you know, try to get a feel for what goes on in your area that you want to work in. I would also say my recommendation would be flexible. You know, if you can't be in your town, you may have to, you know, buckle down and decide to go to a different town, you know, so you just have to deal with that. Well, one thing too is keep in mind that, you know, there are some job opportunities. There's always a need for corrections officers. It can be a good experience as far as just getting something to put on your resume, but it is stressful. I mean, there's a lot of overtime, so basically it's very hard work. There is always, you know, that potential that you could be injured. You know, you could be kidnapped, for example, within the prison if there'd be like a prison uprising or something like that. You know, those are things that are always there. I mean, stressful kind of things. Now, me, myself, when I was probation, never had a peep or a problem out of anybody. Really just got along fine. Just kind of show the badge, everybody backs off, no problem. You know, I've had female corrections officer, which I put a video up here of a female corrections officer that told me that, you know, she's had confrontations, but she said actually some of the inmates actually protected her because she's always treated them fairly. And I think that's basic rule, golden rule, basic rule wherever you go is if you're good to other people, that they'll be good to you in most cases. Now you get some crazy people out there once in a while and there's no accounting for what they're liable to do, but usually reciprocity works where if I'm good to you, you're good to me, and that type thing. So these are things to consider. It's not easy work, but it's challenging, it's interesting, never a dull moment. And I do believe myself, like I said, that the experiences that I had in it, far and away, some of the best things I ever did as far as feeling like I really made a difference and made some lives better. And that's an extremely satisfying feeling. So hey, hope you've enjoyed the course, hope you've enjoyed this video. And I always tell my students, try to finish strong in this last week. I mean, do your very best. And I'll try to work with you. You know that. I've been working with you all semester. So let's try to finish this off in really good order and everybody feeling good about your effort and your outcomes. So, hey, best wishes. Hang in there. Talk to you later.